today, class, we're going to look at what culture shock is. Culture shock is a phenomenon experienced by many as they travel abroad. One of the early symptoms of culture shock is adapting to a culture and the problems that it causes. And these symptoms manifest itself in stress and in trouble relating to the culture, and oftentimes simply a desire to come home. In culture shock, you'll often go through many stages, the first of which is the honeymoon stage. The honeymoon stage is generally experienced shortly after arriving into a foreign country. You will be very enamored of the culture, the food, the localities, and generally having a good time. Unfortunately, as is the case with the honeymoon, it only lasts for a short time. Thereafter, you will often begin to experience a bit of conflict, and this is where what's really culture shock begins to come in. Things that you liked in the honeymoon stage will lose their charm, and you will begin to notice the little intricacies of the culture that you had not picked up on before, things that grated on you, things that bother you. And so you will begin to, what was small will begin to become a big problem. And eventually it will usually reach a head, although often it is not something so noticeable, but it gradually builds up, and this is what's referred to as cultural stress. And when you're experiencing cultural stress, you're going about your daily life, but in it you're not having the same joy that you used to, or what you were accustomed to in your home country. However, in order to successfully live in a foreign country, you have to deal with this. And this is by accepting the fact that things are not necessarily bad, they're just different. And by staying with it and sticking with it, you can learn to overcome the cultural shock and cultural stress. And this leads to norming, where things that were once foreign become more normal to you, and you begin to adjust to a daily life and routine that is different from what you're used to, but has now become normal. And that, in about 3 minutes, is culture shock.
First culture shock moment was the very first day when I got got here, and I was like, oh no, what am I doing? And I couldn't read on the buildings all the signs and stuff. I had no clue what they said. Second culture shock, I'm not good with tons of people. I was at one of the stations and there were just people everywhere, and I was completely overwhelmed with just the amount of people and the noise and all that kind of stuff. And I don't know about a third one, but I don't really think I had a honeymoon stage. I mean, everything you said was great, but life doesn't really follow that pattern, and so I kind of skipped the honeymoon phase and jumped into things right away and got busy, and so it wasn't until maybe 3 or 4 months after I'd been here when things slowed down that I started kind of having my culture shock, so it's different for everyone.
I actually did have a honeymoon stage. I've been overseas about 4 times on mission trips for about a month or so, so I was always typically a honeymoon stage for the first month or two, but then it was about that point that I realized I'm not going home, and so I started going into the stage of I don't really like certain things about the culture, and then eventually I was stressed out, but pretty normal now. So.
Why stage, Regino?
Do you want me to do something?
Yeah.
Culture shock?
Yeah.
Oh man, I went through mega culture shock when I first came here, because coming from a Japanese background in North America, it was nothing like what we experienced with my relatives and friends back there. And so everything that I had thought was Japan was not Japan. And it was pretty radical. I mean, it was, what can I say? I got depressed. I lost a ton of weight. I hated Japan for a long time. All the fun stuff.
Yeah.
I had major culture shock when I came to Japan. But the good thing is that first of all, it's normal to have it, and second of all, if you don't go through it, you probably won't be normal living in the culture. So it's okay, but I wouldn't put that on anyone.
Whatever you want to say about the language, and that would be referring to Japanese, in case you're wondering.
It's completely opposite in every single way you can imagine. Grammatically, thinking. If you think you want to say something in English, don't try and translate it. You just got to say it the Japanese way. So really, there's completely different language and thinking and everything.
Nikki, how did it feel going from a nice southern town in Georgia to the mega city of Tokyo and so many people?
Well, like I said earlier, I'm an introvert, so being around a lot of people wears me out, and it can be quite overwhelming. But at the same time, in the times that I lived here in Japan, I really still felt like it was a lot like America, and there were days when I would be walking around outside, and it wasn't until I heard someone on his cell phone speaking Japanese that I realized I was actually in another country. So, I don't know, somehow it still seems somewhat normal to me. It wasn't kind of the same thing as going to maybe somewhere like Honduras or Yemen or another country where it's a very different culture. There are a lot of similarities to America, and so I think that kind of
Josh, how did it feel to go from driving everywhere to walking or taking a train?
At first it's really weird because you're used to having a personal space, you're used to having your own car, your music playing, you know, singing while you're at the stoplight and weirding out the people next to you. But gradually, I don't know, it's, number one, it's a lot more healthier, I guess, to walk everywhere. And you get used to the train. It's nice to be able just to sit down and go somewhere without having to drive and put gas in the car. So there's benefits to both, I suppose.
Some people are a little finicky in their food tastes. I would be one of those. But I've been in this for almost 2 years in Tokyo. So, Melissa, what would be, if you could say, what's one food that you should definitely try if you're going to be in Japan for a week? What would you say you should try? Sukiyaki. Don't worry, we will not be going to sukiyaki. I'm just kidding. All right. Did you say raw first? Didn't y'all cook it first?
No.
Oh, you really? You ate it raw? Oh, nice.
Raw, yeah.
All right, Nikki.
I think the ramen. You should definitely try that.
Oh, yep. Okay, ramen.
You have to go with sushi. If you're going to get sushi, Japan is the place to get it.
Okay, now what would you say to someone, this is for any of you, I don't actually have all three of you in there, but I will, whoever talks talking, I'll go to you. So, some people come here and are like, man, I'm just gonna, you know, eat my McDonald's and that's it. What would you say to somebody like that?
Why do you tell them to try tonkatsu?
Yeah. Tonkatsu is phenomenal. We will be having that for sure.
I would give them the spiritual answer. When Jesus sent out the disciples, he said, eat whatever is set before you.
Nice.
I would say, before the food, chopsticks are the key.
Yeah.
If you can pick up your food and eat it at a normal pace with chopsticks, anything, you're doing great. And the other thing is a spiritual quote from Billy Graham. He said, where he leads me, I will follow. What he feeds me, I will swallow. And Lord, please keep it down.